In today's news, we will discuss the effects of caffeine. All right, hello everybody. We are coming to you live, but by the time you see this video, it may have been previously recorded. And I am Dr. Jonathan Perlman from Paramount Chiropractic and Wellness, and this is
Nurse Jen. Hi.
How's everybody doing tonight? We've been thinking about what we can call these little segments because we feel we want to bring to you sort of a weekly tidbit of information that can keep you well informed, kind of cut out any of the misinformation, maybe fill in some gaps when it comes to health and wellness. I think, every week we should make a short video like this. Hopefully it won't be too long. And our motto here, and the reason we do what we do, is to spread
truth and love.
Truth and love, and it shall set you free. We're going to be calling segments like this Wisdom of the Week.
Wisdom of the week.
Wisdom of the Week. Patented. Trademark.
I like it.
Nobody else can do it. So today we are going to talk about
coffee. Caffeine.
caffeine.
Coffee for him, caffeine for me.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to you about caffeine because I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding out there in terms of what it is, what it does, how to use it. We kind of glorify it. I totally am guilty of this. I love drinking coffee every day. I act like I need it. I am completely and totally addicted to the smell and the taste. And here's the thing. It is addictive because, Jen, it is a class of drug known as...
Which I'm probably on right now.
And I think the whole concept is there's two things I want to point out. One, not only what the way that this is working, right? The way that caffeine works on the body and why it gets you awake, right? But also maybe some of the negative effects, but most importantly, how it can be beneficial when you're on a ketogenic diet. So me and Jen are going to jump right into this.
Let's do it.
And again, this is not your direct care. We are not your primary care providers. Unless we are, then awesome. And you already know what my advice is for you. Other than that, just take this as a lesson, as some tidbit of information. We are not telling you what to do. We are simply saying this is how things work.
So you can be a little bit more informed.
You want to be well informed, especially this day and age, because my God, fake news everywhere you turn. All right, here we go. Caffeine is a stimulant. It is the most widely used stimulant in the world. Still looking to do that podcast with you, Michael. So whenever you're ready, we got to inform the people about the truth of where their coffee is coming from, the truth about what their coffee is doing for them, and how we can change the world by buying that kind of coffee. Side note, all right, how coffee works. When we drink it, it's a stimulant, and it acts on this neurotransmitter in our body. And we all know that it kind of gives us a wake-me-up. But it actually works on this particular neurotransmitter called adenosine. Adenosine has these receptors that actually bind various other properties, various other substances that are actually what make us sleepy. So in actuality, we are trying to fall asleep, and caffeine, we know, acts on this receptor to wake us up. So, Jen, does that sound like something we want our bodies to do?
No, you would want as much rest as you can take.
That's right. I mean, our bodies are this innate, beautiful entity, and there's no need to be, when we are falling asleep, which is perhaps one of the most important things for all function in any human, in any species. There's a reason why your dog is napping like crazy in the middle of the day, and you're just like, oh man, I got to go work. So I got to go back to work. That's part of, I guess, being human, but you want to get good, restful, quality sleep. Now, if we have additional caffeine in our body, once it's bound to this adenosine receptor, once it's stimulated our sympathetic nervous system and released what we call catecholamines, i.e. epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, that pleasure receptor, that feel-good receptor part of our brain. This is why caffeine is so addictive. However, one thing we hear about all the time is the half-life of a drug. So, Nurse Jen, why don't you tell everybody, when we talk about the half-life of caffeine, what is that? And they use this term loosely, like people are expected to know. So Jen, what is exactly, let's make people truly understand, what's the half-life of a drug?
The time it takes for half the substance to get out of your body.
Okay. And when we talk about caffeine, what's that typical time range?
About 3 to 7 hours.
Yeah, I've seen 3 to 7 hours. I've seen 4 to 6 hours. I've seen 3 to 5 hours.
I think it probably depends on how much you are intaking as well.
So, as we all know, I love coffee. I love the smell. I love the taste. I love it with milk. I love without milk. I love to add water. I like to have it as espresso. I love that.
Me, not so much.
I know. Jen is not a coffee fan by any stretch of the imagination. So where do you get your caffeine from?
Green tea. A lot of green tea. Also a high octane tea, which is amazing. I love that tea.
That'll wake you up in the morning.
It has 150 milligrams of caffeine in it.
Really?
A cup.
One tea bag, about
One
8
tea bag.
ounces, is 150 milligrams. Just so you all know, 2 ounces of espresso, so a short pour of espresso. I mean, some people might critique me and say it's actually 1.5 ounces is a short pour. But 1 espresso is 124 milligrams. So when people want to talk to you about strength of coffee, keep in mind that a short pour of espresso is 124 milligrams of coffee, and you might get that maybe out of like a slow drip 8 ounce, or tall as well. So yes, you can focus in how much concentrate you get out of a coffee in a shorter pour. But one of the things I think is important before we go a little bit deeper into the science is, if you know that the most devastating thing you can do by drinking coffee, as much as we all love it, as much as drinking caffeine, whether you're taking it via pill form or your pre-workout energy drink, or like Jen when she likes her tea.
Or when you took no dose in California.
Yeah, like when I went with the Godols on a vacation many ions ago and they gave me a no-dose, like, oh, this is just like drinking coffee. And I was like convulsing on the floor, running around saying that the restaurant poisoned me. This is like a long time ago, and sensitivity to caffeine, which is where I want to go with this next point. There is a genetic component to sensitivity of caffeine. DNA tests, I'm not saying we're going to get DNA tests, but they've shown that there's this genetic marker called PDSS2, which is somebody who's going to be highly sensitive to caffeine. And then there's the CYP1A2 gene that you are much less sensitive and can tolerate a lot more caffeine.
So are those the people that can have caffeine before they go to bed?
Assuming they've built a tolerance for caffeine, one would think that yes, they can continue to consume it without having those counterproductive effects. The question is, when does it become detrimental? And this is sort of one of the things that we're alluding to while we're being kind of silly is, when your body has caffeine and stimulates the catecholamines, the norepinephrine, the dopamine, the epinephrine, those type of sympathetic type responses, you're basically shutting down digestion and you're getting into an emergent, focused, hyper-focused response. This is why there are all the cognitive benefits, and this is why they talk about them. People that have, I guess you can say, an incentive to sell coffee, they'll say things like, they'll prelude, it helps with Parkinson's, it can show improvements in diabetes and people with Alzheimer's. There are those cognitive benefits. You can really turn on the brain to be hyper-focused and stimulate different areas within our physiology to show this, again, cognitive benefit. So what happens, though, is you are trading off at that moment in time for something that is very taxing to the adrenals and the cortisol system, right? Think of cortisol, we think of stress, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Jen, related to the ketogenic diet that we are proponents of, especially people that are very sensitive to carbohydrates, something that serves me well, why would coffee be of benefit to that person?
I think you're probably trying to get to your hormone sensitive lipase.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we stimulate this hormone sensitive lipase, this enzyme in our body, What does that do for us?
It helps mobilize fat.
Okay. So it helps mobilize fat. Elaborate just a little bit for people to really make it clear. What does that mean?
So this hormone is going to cleave or chop apart a triglyceride cell, which technically is your stored fat, or all your stored fat. Right. So it cleaves it apart, so you don't have to store it as much.
So you can use
it as energy.
Yes. So fat is energy. So whether it's our body fat, which inevitably, like, we all have this excess fat, and we would all like to have as much lean mass as possible. What's funny is people talk about when they start keto that they want to lose weight, but like I tell everybody, stop looking at the scale. And I'm not trying to get off track, because it's not about looking at the scale. It's about feeling and looking thin. It's body composition. You want to be as lean as you can. You don't want to be less heavy. You want to be less fat. How do you get rid of excess fat? By mobilizing fat, by using fat. And Jen, what's the most amazing, cool little feature when we talk about keto and we talk about there's a benefit of coffee and how it can stimulate that hormone-sensitive lipase? What interrupts the mobilization of fat and hormone-sensitive lipase?
It might have to do with a little bit of sugar. Because in sugar, if you ingest a lot of sugar, you're going to increase your insulin.
Right.
And insulin inhibits your hormone-sensitive lipase.
Yep. So there it is. If we were to take this full circle now in summary, let's work backwards. Coffee in a fasted state, and not necessarily in a fasted state, but certainly not with sugar, okay? So not eating a high carbohydrate-rich diet. Coffee can actually help us mobilize fat by turning on hormone-sensitive lipase and thereby cleaving these triglycerides and using fat as energy. I printed out earlier was a couple of studies here. I don't know if you can see the name. Caffeine is a lipolytic food component, increased endurance performances in rats and athletes. The metabolic effect of caffeine in humans. What they did was they showed, rather than just having caffeine alone in mobilizing fat, having some caffeine, then doing endurance style exercise really increased mobilization of fat. That was impressive. Now, those are just two studies, but again, using caffeine in the right circumstances, enjoying our coffee under the right circumstances have shown through science these incredible benefits. Now, where do you get in trouble with this? Not just the insulin, which we know might actually take away that
power,
that hormone-sensitive lipase powerful effect. But what's going to happen when you have a 6 p.m. Coke Zero, or my favorite, Diet Dr. Pepper, at dinner time? Well, that has about 40 milligrams of caffeine per soda can. Let's say you and your family are having this at night. What's that going to do, Jen, to your sleep cycle? The sleep-wake cycle of coffee. So say I was to have 40 milligrams at night at dinner with my family. And folks, that goes for your children, that goes for you adults. When we talk about the components of good health, and we know how important getting sleep is, Nurse Jen, what type of sleep are we trying to achieve, and why would caffeine inhibit this?
Deep sleep. Deep sleep is about, I believe, or at least non-REM is about 4 to 7 hours, and your deep sleep is in your non-REM is the last stage. Now, this stage of deep sleep is where your human growth hormone actually helps with daily stresses of that day, helps muscle rejuvenation. It kind of helps the entire body to heal and process what it did throughout the day for the next day.
Cool. And when she says non-REM, she's talking about non-rapid eye movement sleep. So again, we are not sleep experts. There's tons and tons of research out there, tons and tons of podcasts, tons and tons of books. I recommend everybody start looking into just the amazing benefits, not just of sleep, but thinking about how devastating it is to have sleep deprivation. And we are all inherently maybe a little bit guilty because maybe just being a little ignorant of not understanding about the half-life of coffee, the half-life of caffeine and some of the sugary beverages that we enjoy on the way home, whether we're grabbing our Lipton tea or whether we're getting our diet Dr. Pepper or our Coke Zero to cut down on those sugar and calories. But there's actually hidden caffeine in quite a bit. Again, if you think of a cup of green tea having 70 milligrams, well, a Diet Dr. Pepper, the standard can of the Diet Dr. Pepper has 45 milligrams of caffeine. That will take effect within a half of an hour and then take subsequently up to 7 hours to be fully out of your system, thus eliminating the possibility of you achieving deep sleep. Because we have to remember that scientifically proven, one of the effects of having those stimulants through caffeine, the catecholamine production, is putting you in a state of fight or flight, which is taxing your adrenal system. It is making you live in a stressed environment, whether you feel it or not. And that's sort of where it manifests itself the greatest, is to depriving us of the much needed sleep. So I guess in summary, don't eat chocolate before you go to bed.
Or drink coffee.
Do not drink coffee before you go to bed. And stay off the Excedrin even if you have a headache late at night, because that's one of the ways caffeine, side note we didn't even talk about, caffeine actually helps reduce a headache because the vasodilation or the excessive blood flow to the brain is then constricted by the stimulating effect of caffeine.
Nice.
So that right there, everybody, is going to be our wisdom of the week. Thank you for joining us. Really, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. drperlmantv.com. You can find the links just through this. If you're on Instagram or if you find this on YouTube, everything's here below. Thank you again. And Jen, any closing remarks?
Thank you, everyone.